Okay, I think I'll start. Yeah, it's good.
Is the sound okay? I'll start then. Oh wow! There are a lot of Angular developers at Components Conference. Good morning everyone. Let me briefly introduce the next speaker, Gerard Sands. He will be talking about the coming Angular Ivy renderer. Coming in version 9, will change forever the fate of the universe as we know it. Do I really need to read all of this? Okay. Gerard is very excited about the future of the web and JavaScript. Always happy computer science engineer and humble Angular Google developer expert. He loves to share his learnings by giving talks, trainings and writing about cool technologies. He loves running Angular Zone, GraphQL London and GraphQL San Francisco, mentoring students and giving back to the community. Oh gosh. That is a long intro. Give a warm welcome to Gerard Sands. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. That worked pretty well. So I'm just using one of these voices that you can use from, it's not Alexa, but it's one of the voices available from AWS. It's no one from the organization. Just wanted to try it out. This is the first time, so thank you for applauding me in my intro. That was awesome. So we are going to talk about the Ivy renderer. Wow, that's the reaction I get. Woohoo! Yes, the Ivy renderer. I mean, when was the first time you heard about it? Version 6. 6. We are in version 8 now. So it's building up. I mean, excitement is building up. And today I'm going to cover what I hope will be the whole story about the Ivy renderer. And I titled this like Ivy renderer for Dummies because I water it down like really, really easy for everyone. Okay? All good? Let's start. This is the most important bit of this talk. We could stop here if you wanted. This is my name. I'm Gerard Sands. I'm a developer advocate for AWS, and I've been doing this for a little while. You can see that this is my first trip to Australia. Nice, very good. I'm missing the kangaroos. Where are the kangaroos here? I need to leave the city? Okay, well, I'm going to Sydney. I know that there's some rivalry between the cities. I hope you can leave those aside for this talk. I'm also going to New Zealand. I'm doing a talk in Wellington and Auckland. It's going to be a busy few days here in Australia, just because it's so far away. My God. Okay, so I'm going to start with a timeline. And this will go back few versions of Angular. I'm not sure if you have been Angular developers for a long time, but we're going to go back in time, see the good old times using Angular. So this is 2016, and we got the first Angular release. And this was focused around future ready. And today, we can tell that, yeah, it has survived time. Maybe we have lost to React. We can tell from the people in this room. We are, how much people? 40% against the rest of the conference, which seems to be React or Vue. We don't know. But Angular did really good decisions at the time. They, for example, choose to use TypeScript, which is today standard. We have React adopting TypeScript. We have also the new version of Vue using TypeScript. So that was a pretty good decision back in time. With this release, we got the first version of the renderer. And this came at the time of ng modules. I'm not sure if you were around. I mean, you look young enough not to be around for that. And that was server-side to support server-side rendering. And we are going to talk a little bit more about this. So the renderer is linked to ng modules. 2017, we get Angular version 4, and the theme for that version is stability and performance. And this has been around for the next versions as well. We got animations and the new HTTP client. We also got the new website, which is pretty awesome. And we get as well the new renderer, which is the ViewEngine version 2. So nobody, I think, announced it in any way. It was just done under the covers. But when we got Angular version 4, we get that new renderer as well, which is the one that we are using today. Well, we are in 2019, and we got Angular version 8. The theme now is smaller, faster, and easier to use, which is a great theme. And we have seen a lot of improvements following that effort from the Angular core team. So we got differential loading, lazy routes, dynamic imports. This is a feature that it's pretty handy. And we got also a preview of the new renderer, which is now the version 3 of that original renderer that we use in Angular 2. So let's talk about this new renderer. And maybe before we cover all of the features that are coming, why we need a renderer first? Who knows why we need a renderer? No? No one? Yes? Yes, yes. That's one of the tasks. We have few responsibilities for the renderer. One is to transform the abstractions that we use in Angular into JavaScript. We don't want to be coding these abstractions by hand. So the renderer, I mean, is a job between the compiler and the renderer to transform those Angular abstractions that we know into code that is going to be run on the browser, as you were saying. There's also all this code to create and manipulate the DOM. Nobody wants to do this plumbing. Nobody wants to do that by hand. It's just too tedious. There's also bindings and change detection. So this is also a task for the renderer. And we cannot forget styling and animations. This is also done by the renderer. And these are all tasks that we don't want to be doing, and we let Angular do it for us. So what are the benefits? Well, one of the benefits that maybe not many people are mentioning when talking about Ivy Renderer is that it provides multi-platform support. We are usually focused on the browser, but there are other platforms, and they are all important. Here we can see some of these. So we have the DOM, of course. We have web workers, mobile, desktop, and server-side rendering. Talking about server-side rendering, there's now a rise on solutions on static websites. And there's very many benefits on those. And probably we will see some of these as well coming at the time of the Ivy renderer, because that's enabling these scenarios. Another benefit is that we don't want to be coding this repetitive code. We don't want to be doing the data binding by ourselves. We don't want to be doing the DOM manipulation by ourselves and all of this work. When we use Angular CLI and we develop a PWA application, we don't want to be doing that translation to be supporting this platform. It's the renderer which will do that work for us. And there's also a side effect that comes with using a renderer, which is getting better performance. The code that the renderer generates, this is working better for different JavaScript engines. And this is something that you will never use probably as a developer. But the renderer can do that for us. So let's see an easy example. So we are going to take this simple component, and we are going to see how much work the renderer is doing. And we are going to do that with vanilla JavaScript. So we have this component, it's just rendering H1 element with a title, and we can see that we are using this title with Angular renderer as a string, and that will be rendering this H1 element with Angular renderer inside. So this is a pretty straightforward component. We can see also the use of the selector. So it's going to look for that element, the app root, and it's going to replace that with this HTML. Okay, so this is a naive renderer code. So we have, this is plain HTML page, and I'm just going to add this script here. This is the bootstrapping. I mean, we are calling bootstrapping. There's not much going on. I'm just calling this function. But that will be what you will be doing. So we find this app root element, and we are going to do the rendering, but just by hand. So I'm going to create this element H1. I'm going to create this text node and add the title that I receive as an argument. It's easy enough to follow, but you can see the task that the renderer is doing behind the scenes. I mean, we don't see this because Angular has done that for us. Okay, I hope nobody's using this type of programming today. It's just too hardcore. And that's the output. So I hope you get the idea of what's the renderer doing. So let's move on. So what's the evolution? We have talked about different versions of the renderer. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so this is, of course, you cannot follow this code. This is just to give you like a feeling of what was the renderer version 1. There are different approaches used by these renderers, but just to see the amount of code that they were generating. And these are all similar components, just a simple template with some binding rendering a simple text. This is the last version. This is the Ivy preview renderer. And you can see that it's pretty neat. You can even follow what is going on. And this will bring a lot of nice features that I'm going to cover. These are the reactions on social media. It's like, wow. I don't know if you like cats here. I mean, they are very popular in Europe and US. Maybe you use koalas here, I don't know. Very good. So rendering pipeline. So this is the pipeline that goes through all of the steps from your component until you get the render JavaScript that goes to the browser. So let's see that. Let's compare how these rendering pipelines change. So I'm going to put the ViewEngine. This is like a small race, okay? ViewEngine versus Ivy rendering preview. So we got the first stage. We get the template HTML. We need to parse that. Then here we have two different stories. The ViewEngine is generating this template data that is going to use in a later stage. The Ivy render is generating some template instructions, like some abstraction about what is going on in the page to do the rendering and the data binding. And the next stage is, for the ViewEngine, is passing that to the Angular interpreter. So it's still not done. What we see now is that the Ivy rendering is already generating the DOM at this stage, using those instructions that generated in the previous step. So that's going to go like really, really fast. It's just skipping one step. And this is the loser. So this is what we are using today. Unfortunately, it's not that fast. So this is an overview of what's going on and what's going to change. If we look at an Ivy component, just to mention that some of these APIs are on preview. So they are not the end APIs, but they will look very similar to what I'm showing you today. So we got this render component. And I'm going to use that to render the template for this component. Very similar to the code that I shown at the beginning, but now using the Ivy renderer. So we got similar code. I'm rendering now Ivy renderer instead, and triggering the rendering of this component by using this render component API. Okay, all good? let's see the output. So that's going to show us these instructions. And basically, what we see is this element start and element end. And these are some abstractions that we can reuse for different elements. And that will bring us a lot of benefits. Let's follow this code. So we have the selector, which we are familiar. That's the element that we are going to be doing our rendering. Then we have our template, which comes with these two arguments. RF is render flags, and context is just the instance. You know, if there are any properties for that component, these properties will come with the context. And we have two phases. We have the initial rendering, when we instantiate the component, and then when there is a change detection trigger, which is this second branch. We can see this render flag that is deciding what is going on. So the first phase is going to render these elements. The second one will detect if we change that text, and it will do the replacement. Okay, all clear? Yeah, good. So it's pretty easy to follow, and that will also improve the debugging experience, besides also making a better performance overall. So this is how the Ivy renderer looks like for a component like the one I showed you. So we can feel we are back in control. We are now the captains of Angular, okay? No reactions, okay? So let's cover a little bit more detail the Ivy renderer. So what's the rollout plan? So when are we going to have all of this? I mean, we have been hearing about Ivy since version 6, and it's been a while now. So, well, we got the Angular core team working in different pieces. So we got the Ivy compiler that was finished around version 7. Then we got the Ivy runtime, which was already released, and we are now in the Ivy preview stage. And if all goes to plan, we are going to have the new release around version 9. So this is the plan from the Angular core team. If we have to follow our experience in the last 2 years, that's probably going to take longer, on my experience. But if we are optimists, we will get that in version 9. So some of the features. There's many features that will come with this new renderer, besides the ones that I already mentioned. And one of the main ones is that we will get smaller bundles, which will make our applications load faster. There's also faster compilation. One of the features that comes with Ivy renderer is that it's working at the component level. That means that if we change a component, it will only compile that piece of code. So if you have a large project, it will only compile that bit that you change. So that's going to make these large projects compile much faster. There's also the benefits of this abstract code. It's going to make the debugging simpler. And there's also some other benefits. We get type checking. We get type checking in the templates. We get type checking in places that we didn't have before. And of course, this is going to be backwards compatible. So there's a lot of things coming in this new release of the renderer. Some of them are still not available. So these three features are coming with version 9. If you try now Ivy renderer in the preview version, you are just going to be using a better experience in debugging and also experience in that backwards compatible. For these other features, you will have to wait a little bit more. So let's look into that, smaller bundles. So we have here different examples. This is using a Hello World app, minified and uncompressed. So that's 151 kilobytes using the current version of the renderer, which is the ViewEngine, as we have seen. If we start adding some of the new features, we get a smaller just adding this differential loading. So it's looking into the browser, generating 2 different versions for ECMAScript 5 and ECMAScript 6, and deploying that to the browser, so getting a little bit a save on that bundle. This is the version generated with this Ivy compatible mode, which is the one that we have available today. This is also adding the differential loading. So we are just shaving kilobytes of this bundle for this Hello World app. And this is what we are expecting when we have the final release. And I mean, these are the reactions. Oops, sorry. Hit the wrong key. I mean, I don't know if you have seen. This is like an order of 10 orders of magnitude. I mean, we started with 150, and now we are in just 14 kilobytes. So that's completely impressive. Look at this cat. Okay, so how we get there? I mean, it's quite a lot of savings. Like, how we get to that really small bundle? Well, one of the techniques is using this tree shaking. So we get tree shaking in many different areas. Okay, everybody's safe? The Iron Man room. Okay, template syntax and lifecycle hooks. These are going to be tree shaking. So if you are not using any of the directives or any of the lifecycle hooks, these are not going into your bundle. So you can take that off. Dependency injection, listeners, pipes, queries, if you are not using those, the code is not going to be on the bundle. Content projection, that's also not going, if you are not using it, that's not going in the bundle. And then structural directives, ngIf, ngFor, all that is also not going to be bundled. So we are getting a lot of savings, and it's a little bit more smarter that we had today. And this is how it works. So when the compiler and the renderer go through your components, it will look for these common instructions that we were talking at the beginning. So this element start that I can reuse for any of the elements, HTML elements, I can start seeing which parts of my Angular code I need to add in the bundle. So here, from this example, I need element star. I'm going to use that for the div. I'm going to use that for the H1. I need also element n that's going to render, the end tag for those. There's also a pipe in this example, so I'm going to add that to the bundle, but everything else is not going to be on your bundle. So you're going to save that for every component in your application. So that's going to bring you the benefits. I talk a little bit about this. This is the component locality. So now all of the code is scoped in a component. So if that component is not added to the solution, that's not going to be handled, it's not going to be deployed, and it's not going to be compiled. So we have this new feature, which is incremental builds. That means that once you have a build for your project, if you only change one component, you only need to compile that component. All the other components, they are already built using this new approach from Ivy. So that's going to make the build really, really fast. This is also another interesting scenario because you can compile the components, and they are using this component locality. You can actually pre-compile and build libraries of components and deploy those to NPM. When you use those in your app, these are already pre-compiled. So that's going to make the build of that library much faster, and it's going to also be smaller in the bundle that you're going to use to release your app and or library if you decide to build a library. There's also improved lazy loading. What happens today is that because ng modules, you need to know the whole scope of the application. If you don't have this new feature, it's going to have to wait until the whole application is compiled to know what is the scope. It needs to go through all of the components, what are the dependencies. That's making this task very complex. With the new Ivy renderer, this is now at the level of the component. So you can just put the components that you need, and the renderer will do the rest. That also will make the initial load faster. So we are improving also the experience for mobile and in general, of course. What else we get? We get also simpler debugging. So we get breakpoints in HTML, and we also can debug change detection. So all of the code of the change detection, now we can go and inspect that code. These are some side effects. So what benefits we get? Well, we get also a smaller memory footprint. I'm going to cover this a little bit more later. We get faster tests. This is also because of the benefits that I was explaining now. And then we also get a bunch of bug fixes that come with Ivy that we got like pending. A lot of good stuff. So why we can deliver all of these nice features? Well, we took another turn. A lot of the frameworks that are being used in the front end, they use virtual DOM. The Angular core team is going for incremental DOM. And this is how they differ. If you see, the virtual DOM relies on rendering all of the component tree. And it has to do this for every render cycle. So every time you do a change in your DOM tree, it has to go and render the whole tree. So this is going to be more expensive. If we look at how incremental DOM works, it only adds the changes. And between the different stages, it saves a lot of time. So it won't have to re-render for each cycle. It only will do the incremental bit. So it will remove an element, add an element, and that will make the consumption of memory much, much lower. It's going to be blazing fast. And also we have all of the benefits of these small bundles. Okay. So now we get to think about the possibilities. I mean, what we'll be able to do. This is a new era for Angular developers. Maybe we will go ahead of the other frameworks. How that sounds. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities there, isn't it? Oh, it's coming back. Okay, very good. It was gone for a moment. So try it. We are now in this pre-release phase. So the Angular core team is expecting to get feedback from you. So build your application, see what are the benefits. If you find any issues, report them. It's very easy. You just need to go into the Angular CLI and add this flag, enable Ivy. I mean, it's self-explanatory. If you don't know what's going on, you can come and ask me later. You can also change it on the configuration file. So if you go to tsconfig, you can also enable it there. I mean, it will do the same. This is still in preview, so maybe your application won't build. But then you can report that, and they can help you out. Okay. Everything is possible now. I'm really excited to be talking about Ivy. This is coming now in version 9, so it's going to be around in maybe 1-2 months. So this is an exciting time to be an Angular developer. If you want to know more, I recommend you to follow these people. This is Kara Eriksson, Bikram, Minko, and Manfred. They have really nice blog posts that I used to create this talk. That's all. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions if you have any questions.
So just a quick question. There is such a new term. It's called disappearing frameworks. If you probably some of you familiar. So it means like one of examples of disappearing framework is Svelte. It's a new one. I don't know if you heard it.
Okay.
So, yeah. So correct. Thanks. So basically, it's the idea of disappearing framework is like to compile your app into JavaScript without leaving any footprints in your output bundles, which are getting shipped to the browser.
Okay.
So do you think is it the same direction Angular team is taking by working on new renderer?
I mean, the thing is, Angular has, a bigger ambition. And, supporting all of these use cases, like, for example, server-side rendering, like multi-platform, and all of these, and even, of course, adding the abstractions that Angular has, it has some cost. Some of these techniques can work maybe in some scenarios, in other scenarios maybe are not so good. So I'm not sure how much they support like mobile development, PWAs. I mean, it's a long list of use cases that Angular supports like pretty well. So, I mean, of course, any of the frameworks, they look at what's going on in the open source scene, and they try to learn for any of the frameworks and great ideas that are available. So if they see that there is a benefit using the same approach, I think they will take it. They have done this in the past. There's some examples of that. For example, Angular took the way of the CLI, and they adopted the CLI like pretty early. And there are some frameworks that they don't use a CLI, which sounds like a little crazy. But for example, React, they don't have a CLI, which is
like create React app or something similar.
That's not the CLI. That's only like a scaffolding. It's very limited compared to what we use. Yeah. So we also see what Vue is doing with their CLI. They also building like a visual tool that can do the same that the CLI, but using visual interactions. So I think the tooling is what the people should invest more time. I think the framework, all of this like plumbing, all the rendering stuff, this is boring. This is like computer engineering. But that needs to work. But what we want to do is make the developer experience better. If you have like really nice engineering going on in your framework, but developing using the framework is hard, then we are losing. So I think Angular is doing a good thing investing on improving the developer experience and the tooling.
Thanks for answer. And I have another question. Like, what do you think in the next couple of years, like say 2 or 3 years, how the frameworks like Angular would be looks like?
I love to know.
Like, do you think, like, do you have any, like, have you thought about it at all?
I mean, I prefer to wait for what is coming, I think it's a...
Maybe we'll use like web components and all. Like, maybe frameworks turned into compilers.
I mean, my bet. You want to know my bet? What?
Yeah.
Okay, we can talk this later.
All right, great. Thanks.
What comes after the Ivy renderer? What's on their next roadmap?
Oh, what comes after? I mean, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about this.
Oh, so do they have an open roadmap?
I mean, the problem is I'm not part of the Angular core team. So, I mean, I can talk about anything, but probably the most smarter thing here is to talk about this like off sure. The camera.
well, okay, then my question would be, so you touched on this lightly, and it's a very important comment about the developer experience.
Sure.
So Angular made some very, in my opinion, great decisions very early on with version 2, and that was to do TypeScript and RxJS. The problem was that they scared off a lot of front-end devs to React because of that. Well, that's my opinion anyway. So I'm wondering whether pampering to the lowest common denominator is hurting the technology.
I don't think so. I think in my experience, React and Angular, they are pair on feature-wise, and in anything that, I mean, in my experience, I use both. I actually use Vue as well. I use all of the frameworks, and it's a little bit annoying. But what I can tell you is that you can do anything. I mean, the reasoning that was like some years back that React was faster, that's not true anymore. I mean, a lot of the things are not true anymore. It's just, you can do whatever you want in any framework, it's all good. I mean, sure. If you are a good developer, of course.
Well, that's what happened, right? The good developers took on TypeScript and RxJS, whereas
the good thing is that the whole industry is following the lead of Angular.
Yes.
Because Angular started using TypeScript a few years ago. And now you can see React and Vue going the same way. So we did something good there.
You separated the good devs from the bad devs, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. We touched on a couple of things there that, like the CLI, which of course came from Ember, and the component structure that Angular adopted from React, and the way that we sort of feed off each other by jumping in and looking at the other frameworks and libraries and sort of bringing that knowledge back to the one that we're using.
Probably just a very simple question. You touched on the simpler debugging and Ivy component locality, letting us precompile packages onto NPM. I'm sort of doing that at the moment with libraries. I can't remember the name of the ng packager.
Yes.
And debugging through those third party, my precompiled that I've pushed up into NPM is really difficult. Is that something that will probably be easier in this new paradigm?
I mean, this is a continuous effort. I mean, I'm not able to tell you how good it will be, but I can tell you that the Angular core team will continue to work to make that better. That's the thing that I've seen, you know, in the last releases, and they are good. They are doing a good job there, I believe. But then, I mean, popularity is not always, you know, on par with quality, unfortunately.
Do we have any other questions? Are people just noticing this? We do.
I read on the GitHub that it says that in V9, IV is going to be the default enabled on V9.
Yes.
So what's the take on this, as in, because you were saying that it's still breaking if you if you enable IV now, but then would it be harder for like developers to upgrade to V9 in the future because it's enabled by default, because the backward compatibility is not stable yet?
So the approach is for, you know, compatibility. So we now have the renderer, and we are in this pre-release phase, and this is just for safety. So now we have been in this for a few months already. The process inside Google, it works this way. They will activate the flag internally. I mean, Angular is mainly servicing internal Google applications. It's not very popular, not many people know about it, but that's the main goal of Angular, servicing these large applications inside Google. And of course, they cannot break those applications. I mean, these are applications that we use every day, and they start there. So this has been going on for months now. And the quality that they achieve is higher. Now they put this version out, this pre-release version, so other applications, like applications that they don't know how they were built, they can start experiencing the new renderer. So that's the moment to start. I mean, if you want to use some of these features, that's the moment to start testing. And then, of course, they have solved the issues. I mean, they are using these in very public applications that you use every day, and nothing has been broken. I mean, broken, it means, it doesn't mean that it's not fixable. It means that it's not with no effort. The effort could be maybe a couple of hours. But that's going to be improved, and they are polishing that. But they have been polishing this for a few months now. It's probably more than half a year now. So it's pretty in good shape. Of course, they cannot foresee how are you using your application, how are you building your components. There's a lot of use cases, and that's why they are opening this pre-release. This is for safety. At the moment of the release, if they feel that it's not in a good shape, they are not going to release it. That's what they will do. So don't worry about that. It's going to be 100% compatible, and you won't experience any issues at all. The issues should come up now. But they are trying with maybe hundreds of applications inside Google. So even if there are issues, they are finding the issues and fixing them. So that's going to be like super solid.
All right. I think we're having morning tea right now, and you might be able to tell by my physical presence that I like to have a snack. But by all means, run in, grab a coffee, cup of tea, something to nibble, and we'll be back in here in 20, 30 minutes. Right. There's a schedule.
Yeah. You like the intro? Yeah, you like the intro?